Episode of Sheebie Jeebies, the horror podcast by cats, for cats, and about cats. Not really. We just have kind of a bit of a theme, but maybe not really. Today we're going to be talking about 1943's The Leopard Man. I know, we're not doing cat people. I'm sorry. We'll get there, I promise. Just not this week. So, for this one, I've got Griffin, who, if you're familiar with the community from Visited by Voices, you'll see him pop up in the chats on the regular. And you'll also see him on a couple of streams, obviously. But I have to give you mad praise for this, because it's like, you know all the books. Like, you basically, you hover next to a book and you just absorb it. It's like...
Oh, really?
Dude, it's for real. You just go through them like nothing. It's really impressive.
Oh. Got a lot of
I know,
free time sometimes.
Just put you on the spot, I know, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you for
that. So, I mean, I guess the easiest way to get into this is that, we met through the community and movies.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, that's pretty much all there is to it. So why did you want to do The Leopard Man? Because I know, originally we were going to do them.
Well, to be fair, I'll just be blunt. The middle way, it was a little slow. It was a lot of investigation, inquiring, and I was just like, not a whole lot to discuss here. Let's do a slasher. Well,
yeah, or this was kind of one of, if not the first serial killer movie. We didn't really have the whole serial killer term down then, though, right?
No, yeah, this is not the first. I'm sure there's something far before this, but it's just kind of a fascinating kind of predecessor to like the 1980s style of, well, like late 70s, early 80s style of horror film.
Yeah, and a very nice little horror noir. And also directed, it is also directed by Jacques. I'm sorry, I apologize to the entire country of France for what I'm about to say. I can't speak French. Jacques Cornier.
Jacques Tana.
Jacques Tana. That sounds much better. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a $5 word.
And also produced by Val Lewton, and I know that there's obviously a big fan contingency for both of those gentlemen. I was going to ask you, because this is going to be in my giant blind spot, since if it's pre-1970s, I don't know jack all of shit about it. But, so, didn't this director also just go by Jack Turner for some films?
Yes, he went by Jacques Tana. Sounds real fancy.
That sounds good, dude.
Sounds fancy. Okay, but anyways, yes, he started out with Luton, Val Luton, working for RKO, which was one of the kind of big companies. They actually owned Disney. If you watch I know for a fact Peter Pan, you'll see the RKO logo plastered in there. But Citizen Kane, and it's a lot of the talent that worked on Citizen Kane. Mark Robinson, who was the editor for this film, and then I'm blanking on his name, but the other. Yeah, this is a horrible podcast. But anyways,
it's fine.
Well, there goes my credibility. Anyway, so Val Lewton kind of, he cultivated, he was kind of like the Roger Corman before Roger Corman, like right before he was like, because he showed up towards like the late 40s, and this is early 40s, so this is just right after Citizen Kane, kind of shook the world, with new film techniques. But we're not here about that kind of film history. We're talking early horror. And really psychological, like slasher. Like this bears a lot in common with, say, like the original Friday the 13th, because the
Mhm.
film has no real, like, there's really no central character. There's, you know, like the film, like it starts off with some characters and it transitions. Like the characters will interact with somebody, and then we will start to follow them, which was a very unusual style. Typically, even films, you know, today, it's like we're sticking with like the same people, and we
Mhm.
just follow them throughout the story. We occasionally jump, you know, to someone else doing something, but typically it's 90% to 100% movie follows one or two characters.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the shifting perspectives quite a bit, because it is so much different than what I'm used to. And so I have to. I'm gonna. Okay, I'm gonna expose my ignorance here. The whole thing about the leopard, because I was like the Leopard Man. All right, let me see what this is about. And then there's a picture of the leopard. Dude, that's a panther. And then I had to do some googling. So I didn't know this at all, but apparently black leopards are also just black panthers, and it's like they're the
Hmm.
melanistic color variants of leopards. So I mean, technically, yes, it's a leopard, but it's also a panther. So the more you know. Ding. This one was
Educational,
named
you know.
Dynamite, which I thought was cute as hell.
I know. Man, I don't know what it is like. Just seeing like just an animal like that being photographed, it's really like, I don't know what it is, but like he's just magnificent. Like if I was in like the 1940s, I would have been like absolutely stunned to see just such an exotic creature on the screen.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And that's kind of when we start the movie. So it's set in this little New Mexico town. Uh, Specifically, when we open, it's in the dressing room of a nightclub, and one of our main characters, I suppose, since there's no real established main ones, Kiki. She's a performer there, and she's kind of like got a rivalry with Clo Clo, who is a castanet player and also dances. And Kiki's boyfriend Jerry comes in walking this panther into the dressing room. And so Kiki can go ahead and steal the spotlight from Clo Clo, which also Kiki and Clo Clo is going to fuck me up all podcast.
I
So,
know.
yeah, and I mean, like, she even jumps on that chair because, rightfully, if somebody walked a panther in here, I'd be a little bit
Yeah,
nervous.
but thanks for that warning there,
Yeah.
Jerry.
So, yeah, I know, right? Jerry's just like, I'm just going to rent this wild animal from the indigenous gentleman outside. And, yeah, we'll just, interrupt Clo Clo's performance with it. And all, not gonna lie, Clo Clo scares it off with her castanets. I was like, okay, I hope he eats that bitch. Fuck that. Don't scare cats away. I don't care if they're panthers. But she has like no fear at all. Clo Clo is played by Margot, and she's probably my favorite part of this movie. She really steals pretty much every scene that she's
She's like a hurricane. She just
in. Mm-hmm.
storms around, and it's fascinating because she's the first character we see in the film. Like when the film opens, we see her in her dressing room, and then the camera pans over and shifts to Kiki and the I guess she's a waitress,
Oh, she's a cigarette girl. I mean,
cigarette
I guess
girl.
she probably also worked as a waitress too, but mostly you see her selling cigarettes. Eloise, I think, is her name.
Mm.
And no lie, I honestly thought Eloise was the murderer because she just kind of pops up randomly throughout this movie. And there's one part later on where Kiki and Jerry are getting ready to go back to Chicago, and she's also talking about wanting to leave this New Mexico town. And I'm thinking, wow, it's almost as if she feels like a caged animal. Hmm.
Mm. Murder suspect number one.
No, sadly, no, that's not the way it happened.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
No,
I,
I really liked her though too.
she was pretty good. She kind of reminded me of um, Angela Lansbury. I don't know.
Oh.
I kept thinking Angela Lansbury for some reason with her, like similar profile. But I remember the other direct editor, Citizen Kane, Robert Wise, who worked on Val Lewton's films. Val Lewton would gather various talent, and he would give them jobs because these were low budget films. Like these weren't
Less than
like
150,000, and they were
yeah,
usually like 75 minutes at tops.
yeah. These films were low budget, so they worked with what they had, and they focused all on the written word, the dialogue, and just the simplistic visuals. Like like a lot of films around the time, like this was right after like Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, huge, bombastic, giant sets, tons of people. This is a small, contained film, as most Valiant films are. Pretty much almost all of them are.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacques Tourneur would direct three. This is his second collaboration with Val Lewton. This is the second after Cat People, the first film
Yeah.
that started this whole line of horror films, and he would go on to direct I Walk with a Zombie, and then he would do a major classic in the film noir community or film noir history, Out of the Past with Jane Greer, Robert Mitchum, and Kirk Douglas. So we're not going to talk about that film, but I would recommend all four of these films that I just mentioned. They're all worth it.
Nice.
But back to the so Clo, the amazingly woman she is, she scares off the poor big cat.
Yeah, and you saw it's like that cat runs out past that waiter who drops all these dishes, and then he's got like all these scratches on his hands. And I was thinking, is that from the dishes or the cat? Because I don't think I saw him. I don't think the cat clawed him. He's just super clumsy.
It, it's insinuated that he was cut by the cat because
Yeah.
later on in the film they mention the claw marks and we see blood. That's a kind of a not really you really, even like Universal stuff. Really didn't see much blood, so you get a little bit of blood in here up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah, and we saw that also with when the leopard claims his first victim.
Oh,
It's this girl. Oh, I'm sorry.
let's work our way up to that because the payoff is that payoff is one of the best early horror just sequences ever, like in early years. You could see like the influence on anything from Halloween, Friday 13th, hell, Nightmare on Elm Street, like literally uh, uh, Elm Street 2.
I was thinking that.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Uh-huh.
we'll get there. We'll get there. But so Clo has, everyone's leaving the club. People are, they've got the cops on the lookout for the leopard. Clo is wandering around, and she's got it's maracas, right?
Castagnettes.
Castagnettes. She's got her
Yeah.
castagnettes, and she's playing them, and she's constantly using them. And uh, she walks past this family of three, kind of like a 10, 12-year-old boy,
Yeah.
their mother, and then the kind of teenage daughter, you would
Mm-hmm.
say.
Yeah.
And the mother asked the daughter to go out and get a bag of corn or corn flour.
Cornmeal.
Yeah, cornmeal to go get some cornmeal, and she's flipped out, so she won't go. So the brother, this is in 100% like used in 80s horror films. Is the little brother starts doing shadow puppetry, making he's doing the making
Yeah.
the
Making
puppet
like a leopard head.
yeah, leopard head. It's like that is like you would see that in like a 80s type of horror film, like the younger brother character to like the teenage
Close.
older
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah. And after, I know that, and after Teresa goes out to go and get the cornmeal, while Clo is also walking, she runs into a fortune teller named, I'm
Oh,
sorry, I
that's
believe it was
right. Yeah.
Maria. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Maria gives her a card, and it's the Ace of Spades, which I was like, okay, so your hard work's coming to fruition. But apparently that's the death card, so I'm like, well, different times, meanings will change.
Hmm.
Not my problem.
Yeah. So
Uh,
it's Teresa, the young girl. She she tries to go to the shop that's in the town, and they're like, what the hell are you doing here? We're closing up, bitch. We're done. we're not
yeah,
we're not taking no orders.
yeah, she's got to walk
Uh,
all the way across the Arroyo to the other
yeah,
grocer.
yeah. She has to walk across town, and one of the most gorgeous, just incredibly visual, like just like the app, like speaking of shadow play, like she has to go underneath of a bridge,
Yeah,
uh, and the bridge is for trains, and we get again, Bella. One of the first things known for is cat people is he's kind of the innovator, well, not innovator, but he's kind of like the guy who made jump scares, like false jump scares are constant, and the first jump scare we get is a tumbleweed.
yeah. You know, what was funny is like when I was thinking about this scene and then later on in the cemetery scene, is how relatable this Fear of the Dark feels, the way it's shot and acted.
Hmm.
It feels like these are all very normal reactions that I would have to being in the dark if everything was like really creepy and you knew there was a wild animal on the loose that could possibly maul you to death. Um, and I think we've definitely lost a lot of that these days. We don't really have that sense of tension.
Yeah, there's a lot of buildup. So we
Yeah.
won't go play by play, but essentially she gets the corn and she's coming back, and there's this beautiful, like this is 100%, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but Dario Gento for Suspiria and Lucio Fulci, they must have been fans of this film because there's a great shot of in the kind of in the corner on the side wall. It's completely pitch black, but you see these two eyes just staring out of the darkness. These two uh, luminescent eyes, and it's just like, oh man, like that is like pure, like is that her imagination? Is that the leopard?
Hmm.
And of course, and then she's sees that, and then that's when the train comes by and gives a really good jump. Like that was
Yeah.
pretty great.
So,
And
and I think also wasn't William Friedkin also a big fan of this movie as well? He did the commentary for the DVD release for one of them.
yes,
The
yeah, it's on all the DVD and Blu-ray releases.
Yeah, I mean that honestly, I'd be interested enough to buy this movie just for the commentary track.
It's worth it. It's worth it. I listened to the commentary track. It's pretty good. I also listened to his Vertigo, but we won't
Okay.
get off of that. So she walks underneath the bridge, and she's already to come back, and all of a sudden turns around, and who's sitting waiting up on on the not the tracks, but like kind
A
of on the
ledge.
little the ledge. It's the leopard, and she makes the first mistake. She turns her back to it, and to my, I think to a lot of people it would just be like, oh well, he was just gonna, because she uh he was gonna attack her anyways. But it's really if she would have kept eye contact and challenged him, I think she would have might have made it. But she gets chased, and we lead to Sam, and probably one of the most violent scenes in the film, quote unquote violent, but
Oh,
it's great,
it's
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 awesome.
very intense, and because the chase doesn't happen entirely off screen, does it?
Hmm.
Or
Uh,
does?
well, she's running up the hill.
Yeah,
She trips and stumbles,
of course.
and then she gets up, and then she's running towards, and her mother has locked her out. She's actually locked her. So she's banging on the door. She's asking everyone to let her in, and the leopard gets her.
Oh,
So
that part is heartbreaking because she's right there on the doorstep. She's almost safe. She's begging for her mother to let her in. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's so close. and then you hear the sounds of her being killed, and then you see that
Mm-hmm.
just enough blood under the door, right, to really get that point home, and to make your imagination kind of like go into overdrive, like what did this animal just do to her? And yeah, like you said earlier, it's very reminded me a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street too, where Brady gets the claws through the door, where you see
Yeah,
her stab through. Yeah.
and what happens? His parents are present.
Yes.
Like they show up, just like the mother and then her brother are. They witness. So it's like that's like talk about just like horror. Like shit, man, that was brutal for 1940s, man. Oh,
Hmm.
oh.
Yeah, and Kiki and Jerry are basically cleared of any sort of uh, responsibility, which is hilarious. Well, it's more on Jerry. He's the one that rented the leopard. Um, but he's cleared of any responsibility for it, and it's deemed an accident. It's like, oops, got eaten by a leopard. What are you gonna do? And meanwhile, the leopard's owner, Charlie, he's like, hey, bro, I need some money for my fucking leopard. Also, it wasn't like $225 in 1943 money. Oh, I wouldn't even want to try and pull that now.
I know, yeah. Back then, that was quite a bit of money. So everybody's put on edge, and this is the thing. This is the aspect of now that this actually has happened, the leopard, because kind of people were kind of like, kind of weary about it. They were kind of on edge. Now it's like everybody is now. We see people walking their doors. We see because since we're in a New Mexico Mexican town, you see a lot of people. Like they're doing like their what's it? Like the
Uh,
blessing their home. So like just in case the leopard does come.
mm-hmm,
And at the funeral where they're Jerry, the police captain,
mm-hmm.
and we meet a new character of Dr. Galbarat.
Galbraith. Galbraith?
Yeah,
Galbraith. Yeah.
we'll say it the first way you said it. Galbraith.
Galbraith. Yeah.
Um, who is a historian, and he's kind of like he was a former zoologist professor.
Yeah. Now he mostly just takes care of the museum. He curates everything.
Hmm. So they're asking him, talking to him about where do you think this leopard will go, and he's like, well, kind of just basically it says, he'll kind of go out into the wild, into the wilderness to hunt for more prey instead
Mm-hmm.
of trying to deal with people.
Yeah.
So
So
everybody's just it's just turmoil. It's just swept in its whole town.
yeah, and you can feel kind of this. You can feel like the fear that hangs over the town too, but you can also see people also. Everybody kind of feels a little bit guilty for everything that's going on. Teresa's mother is obviously hella guilty for locking the door. And, Kiki and Jerry obviously have plenty of guilt on their plates since if they hadn't started this whole thing with, hey, let's get the leopard to interrupt Clo and take the spotlight from her, yeah, that girl would probably still be alive. And I just love the fact that that continues throughout this movie, especially as
Yep.
we get a few more bodies going.
And then so the characters they've decided to form a posse and wander around the kind of the perimeter around through the town, and we're Clo, just like as these characters are talking, they kind of walk off screen. Clo walks into frame, and we're following her again, and she meets this uh this guy's a merchant selling flowers, and this other woman,
Yeah.
she's buying flowers, and then Clo, the amazing person she is, goes and steals one, and the guy merchant's like, he ain't having it. So
Yeah, but the other gal there just gives her one because she's getting them for her mistress. since she works for a wealthy family, and that's Consuela that we'll meet later. So she is she's the teenage daughter of this family, and it's her birthday, so hence those flowers. And I love, I really enjoyed this part, of course. The fact that Consuela is planning to meet her boyfriend Raul at the cemetery because she always goes to the cemetery to take flowers to her father's grave on her birthday, which, I mean, I'm not going to say anything about how you celebrate your birthday. I've done that. But, I mean, my father's not dead. Somebody else is. But anyway. But it's mostly a ruse to kind of go and meet up with Raul. And her mother calls her out. Her mother knows exactly what she's doing. And she's just sort of trying to look out for Consuela, because she says, I've been through all of this before, so you go on your merry way. And, I mean, certainly she does. And by the time she gets to the cemetery, she's already missed Raul, though. And she ends up getting locked in. And which is kind of a nice callback, because after, Lauren and I did One Dark Night, I also had somebody getting locked in a cemetery. Well, in a mausoleum. Yeah, cemetery, mausoleum, whatever you want to say.
That's just how we roll on CBGBs. Huh? That's just how you roll on CBGBs.
I know. People are getting locked into cemeteries and mausoleums on the reg.
Mm-hmm. So back to the usage of the statues is incredible. I love the way they will show they'll they'll frame the statue with Consuela, and she's basically waiting. This is probably the one part people could pick. It's like, why is she sitting there for 2 hours? Because she shows up they make a mention of at 4:00. So she leaves at that time to go meet him. And then when she meets the guy, the gatekeeper, he mentions, this place is going to close down at 6. I'm locking it up. And when I call, you better get out because I'm leaving. I'm booking. I love how people in this town, like the store clerk is like, I'm done. When I'm done, I'm done. And then now we got the graveyard keeper. He's like, yep, I'm out. I'm booking it. He didn't bother to put his fire out. He was gone.
Nah, he's getting out of there for the day. And it's like
very relatable.
Yeah, I'm guessing this is one of those things where, probably the family didn't really approve of Raul if they even knew he existed. So it's kind of one of those things where you got to sneak behind the family's back. Very kind of like Romeo and Juliet almost.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 2 hours, man. Woo-wee. You're real trying to get it wet for your birthday. All right. I wonder if birthday sex started as a thing. Who knows?
Again, another kind of prelude to the 70s, 80s horror, slashers. Yeah. Characters will do ridiculous things for human pleasures.
Yeah, that's human very true. Yeah, so she decides that she's going to dip out because it's been a while and she's hasn't found, Raul's still nowhere to be seen. And sure enough, cemetery's definitely closed. And then right about now, it's sort of like there seems to be she starts getting the creepies, she starts feeling all creepy and weirded out because it's dark and it's, she knows that the leopard's still on the loose. And is it right about this time that she sees something in the tree? Or does she start yelling for help?
She starts screaming for help, and then she starts banging at the gate. She goes to the gate. Mm-hmm. And then she turns around. She tries to go to the other side of the cemetery, and she runs into the old man statue, because the other one was of a woman. And then she goes to the one with the older man, and that's when she hears, she starts yelling for anybody, and a truck driver hears her and says, yeah, I'll come back and get a ladder and help you out of there.
Yeah, she doesn't
So,
want to be left alone at all.
hmm and this is our second. She becomes the second person to die with this
Yeah, and
really great creepy shot. Oh, I loved it.
coming out of the whole thing with the tree
Yeah,
shot,
yeah, the
where you
tree
see the
being
tree,
right,
the tree
the
branches
tree,
bend.
yeah, all the tree branches start like they kind of are moving, and all of a sudden they just start bending into frame. I love that. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and it's also I also like the fact that when the police are investigating the scene later on, once they eventually get everything opened up again, they're making notes of this. They're making notes of that. The leaves don't normally fall from this tree at this time of year, so and they also see, of course, the claw marks too. So just deducing that, hey, this is the leopard again.
hmm
Nice little touch. So,
And with Jerry enters the picture again. Dr. Galbraith
Galbraith.
shows up, Galbraith, and they all show up, and the police are all there. And I kind of like how they didn't really come in through the gate, like they're all doing this ladder, like they got this big old ladder, set up to go to walk over. I just thought that was kind of, I don't know, it was a nice visual, kind of little extra visual value to the film.
hmm Yeah, right about now is sort of when I was so gaslit by the part with Charlie because Galbraith is, suggesting that, hey, I mean, somebody with a knowledge of, like, they wonder if it is the leopard that killed Consuelo, because Charlie himself has already said before that that leopard is friendly. But, I mean,
Unless you
if,
scare them, which,
right, unless you scare the leopard. So we know that it killed Teresa. But yeah, the rest of that's kind of like a toss up. But then Galbraith makes Charlie believe that he's actually the one responsible because Charlie enjoys drinking and he blacks out after he drinks. And I was like, I was getting so fucking mad, right? I was like, poor man.
yeah, that was, yeah, he basically brings Jerry brings Charlie to him, and Charlie's struggling, like he can't make a dime without the leopard. So um, they're talking about if you think this was another leopard attack, and the doctor's like, yeah, of course it is, and Charlie says, I don't think so. I don't think my leopard would have just forcibly jumped over a stone wall to get to somebody.
mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean, extra effort just to get to someone.
yeah, and that I think that's where they lead to the whole thing. Like, well, if this is a man, it would have to, be familiar with how the leopards act, and also, of course, have access to leopard claws and leopard fur, and so kind of making Charlie out to be the primary suspect. And I was like, really? Oh my god. I hate. I started really hating Galbraith at that moment. I was like, oh, you suck so much.
And Charlie, to his credit, says, you know what?
Throw me in
I don't know if
jail.
it's true or not, but
Yeah.
he pretty much like demands the police chief to lock him up. And
Yeah.
the police captain chief, he's kind of like, I don't think you are, but if it'll make you feel better, fine, I'll throw you in.
I
And
got
that's
nothing
so for
better
a
to
couple
do.
days. It's a sleepy New Mexican town, so why
Mm-hmm.
not?
Yeah. I mean, and Charlie does clear his name because that night we get our next murder, which is
Mm.
Clo. And before that, she's at the club with this rich man, quite a bit older, and just sort of making small talk, keeping him entertained, and also talking about the hard life that she has, I suppose, with her. And
Well,
she drops the name Carlos Dominguez, and I'm thinking this is just a misdirection, I'm sure.
but we
The
find
car.
out she has a son, or she has a daughter. She has
Yeah,
a child.
yeah, but I didn't see the father there, and it seems like she just lives with her mother,
hmm
and her mother watches the kid while she's out working.
hmm But
And
we forgot to mention before she gets to the party, she meets her fortune teller friend, and
oh yeah,
yeah, this is the part where she says you'll meet someone, money, and then she keeps trying to change it. It's like it's because the ace of spades keeps popping up.
yeah, and yeah, and she just and then is it that's not, is it that reading right before she ends up meeting the before she ends up meeting that rich man when the fortune
Yes,
teller is talking about something large and black, or is that after that? I think it might be
this
after.
is this is before because she. Well, no, I guess because she meets her again, she stops at her
Yeah,
place and sees she's just smoking, so she decides to go in, and I can't remember exactly of how it played out, but she meets her like before, and then she goes and walks by because she walks by her to her place, but she goes to after she meets this rich man, they have a really pleasant conversation, and he tips her $100, which is insane
I
about
mean,
money.
yeah, I mean, she was probably working him all night long though, so to be fair, and
Yeah,
putting up
so
that really good sob story, lamenting, you know, the whole like, oh, the Carlos Dominguez who works at the grocery store and her child, and I'm just, I probably wouldn't work a mark like that if it were me, but it worked out for her just fine.
hmm and then we actually before this, and then after that is when we find out she actually does have a child. She
Mhm.
wasn't lying about that
Yeah,
aspect. And so then she's kind of like, she comes in, she's talking to her mother, and then she notices the money that she was given is gone. So she goes, runs out, and she, is wandering around looking for this $100 bill, uh, which is kind of interesting. See, like he folds it in like a square, like it's a little
yeah,
square.
I'd lose that too.
Yeah, that was an interesting little choice to go with. But she's
I
running
know.
around looking, and she bumps into this guy while she's looking for the money. This guy driving a convertible. He drives up and he asks her if she needs a ride. She at first is going to be like, "Oh, okay," but then she goes, "What color is the car? Black? Oh no, get away from me!" And he's just like, "Okay."
I mean, he didn't have the stereotypical Texan accent that all these
I
characters
know.
do,
Where
but
was that at?
I don't know if there was, if that was, if the accent was there or not. But all I could think of is, wow, that cowboy hat has got to be this has got to be a dude visiting from Texas. Just has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So she gets scared, she runs, and then she goes and pretty much. And again, to reiterate, everyone's pretty much locking their doors. Pretty much right before uh, night hits, everyone's is locking and shutting down.
hmm
Everyone's just terrified because then we see a few more instances of people like locking their doors, and then she's basically walking in darkness practically because no one's outside. Uh, and then is this the character? Like I'm having a hard time figuring it. She decides to start putting on her makeup because she hears someone coming around the corner. And she thinks it's somebody she knows, and all of a sudden a cigarette gets thrown onto the ground.
I thought that was her.
And
I must be mistaken.
I, because like we see cigarettes at the because when Sam mentioned he was there, Raul.
Mhm.
Uh, there was cigarette butts laying around in this area next to like the statue of the woman, and there's these seats, and so there's just all these cigarette butts. So somebody was there. We don't know who, and then now a cigarette's getting dropped. Um, I don't
That's a
know.
good point. Thank you for bringing that to my attention because I thought that those were Raoul's cigarettes in the cemetery. I thought it was
Mhm.
supposed to signify how long he'd been waiting.
Yeah, it's never made clear, but we see a cigarette getting thrown onto the ground, and she looks at it, and then the person who's coming up to her. she then screams and drops her makeup.
Yeah.
Uh, Makeup because she got the lipstick and then she got a little a little mirror. So she runs and we get this great shot of like the cigarette and we just see the shadows running uh running over it.
Yeah.
And now she is now the third victim.
Yeah, and we should mention also this movie's only an hour or so, an hour and change. We've got four
Hour
people dying
16.
in this movie, so it's like you're getting a death every 15 minutes. I like that. I like those. I like that pacing very much. I'm here for it.
Death for your buck.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, after Clo gets, is killed, if you're Kiki and Jerry, you're kind of like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to dip out. We're going to head back to Chicago. Since this was just kind of like a touring thing. But also, I mean, I feel like there should probably be repercussions. But I guess
Well, yeah. Well, they're like we're dipping. We
yeah,
out.
and they're taking off right before this weekend where I think everything's closed up anyway because there's a procession that they do every year, which is, gosh, I am so sorry. What was that procession?
It was for the conquistadorians taking over and killing all the Indians
Right, that's
of
thank
the
you.
village.
Yeah,
And they're dressed up in these like awesome, like they're like these like the Klan kind of looking, but like they're all black, and they're wearing the hoods and stuff, and they got all these like really decorated symbols all over them, and they're holding candles in their hands.
yeah. What?
Amazing visual.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if they kind of have some relation to druids. I got druid vibes a little bit, but then I also
Yeah.
think I was, thinking about wrestling where Vince McMahon did the whole like, "It was me, Austin. It was me all along." I probably got too wrestling.
I was definitely thinking, definitely felt like a Resident Evil 4 popular horror video game. And the second half of that game, you're fighting evil priests who are wearing, cloaks. And then, like, they're like the higher ranking ones have similar symbols to the ones you see in this film, which I thought that was pretty interesting. I was, like a lot of different, like different, like this film feels like it really influenced a ton of like creative people.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't get a chance to do a deep dive into the procession itself. It's like with the garb, but yeah, I can definitely see that. And
So when when uh when we see the procession, the cigarette girls there, Kiki and uh Jerry, and they're asking and well they're kind of like okay we're gonna be leaving all of a sudden like they get a package delivered to them. It's from Doctor Galbraith.
Dr. G.
I'll just keep screwing up his name.
This is like
Uh,
Dr. G.
Dr. G. Then he kind of walks through, and he's the one who tells about because the cigarette girl, does the audience thing and goes like, "I've been living here all my life, but I don't know what this is." So he has to explain it to her. Yes, that happens in the film.
I
So we
mean,
get
fair.
an exposition, the historian, and kind of explain stuff. So then this is the interesting part because Clo is the one who was kind of like the character that was kind of moving around, and when a character she would interact with, the story would follow them. Now with the cigarette girl, we now trade places with Dr. G. We're following him,
Oh.
and I'll let you take over from here because I'm really curious your thoughts on this part.
Well, shortly before this scene, Kiki and Jerry end up getting some flowers from Dr. G on the way out of town. But, they stop by the cemetery because they're both still also very overburdened with their guilt. And this isn't really, it wasn't a turn that I necessarily expected from them. Not to say that they're shallow, right?
Hmm.
I guess it just felt like maybe they weren't as invested in what the town was going through because they don't live there all the time. They're just passing through on a tour. So what happens to these people in the long run isn't really going to be of that much concern to them. So the fact that they go back to they stop by the cemetery to leave those flowers there, really kind of said a lot. But it said even more during their conversation when it's revealed that both of them have no money because they gave their shares of the tour at the nightclub to the families of Teresa and Clo because of due to the murders. And I was like, oh, I like you guys now. So that was lovely. And Jerry suggests that that it could be a man doing this. Mm-hmm. And Kiki's like, we've got to catch a murderer. We're not going anywhere. And I would just be like,
the Scooby-Doo starts. Scooby-Doo theme starts.
Yeah, a little Scooby-Doo-ish. So anyway, when our perspective shifts over to Dr. G, I don't want to say Galbraith. That's too much. When our
cool name.
Yeah, if you can say it, but
yeah,
it's a lot of work. There's a lot of L's, a lot of R's, and a lot of eh. So
we'll just pass right on that. So we're following. Perspective has shifted to Dr. G, and man, I love this part.
This was very effective. This gave it a kind of a much spookier vibe because we're seeing Dr. G. He passes by the cemetery. He hears a voice calling for help, much like Consuela. And then he's hearing the sound of castanets clicking, just like Clo. And so it's sort of implying that he is, probably our villain that we're looking for. You can see that he's really burdened with what he's done, right? Where he may be imagining these things happening. But different, he's put in a very similar position as our other three murders. I mean, Teresa, Consuela, and Clo all had this, this whole feeling of being followed. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that came through with Dr. G also.
Yeah, he starts, after he passes the cemetery, he starts profusely sweating. Mm-hmm. So basically, before he hears the castanets, a cigarette falls into frame onto the ground. It switches, and he sees it, and then he kind of looks at it a little bit, and he runs off, and he goes to his museum, and that's where he takes a handkerchief and he starts wiping his brow, and he goes to start to being the nerd he is, and he starts doing a little chiseling on his like he shows when Charlie and Jerry show up earlier. He shows like all the artifacts they excavated. And so he's kind of just chiseling away, and he keeps hearing the castanets play. Mm-hmm. And
then he hears
he decides to sit, like, he has a desk that's like sitting back behind like there's a window behind him. He decides to get up from doing his excavating, and he goes to sit in one of the chairs, and like the door is back over here. So it's like, I was worried about someone coming at me. I'm not put my back to no damn door.
This is also the man that got up from his desk after he was already being creeped out and decided to turn off the lights. No, it's not waking up in here.
But when he sits down, and of course he hears footsteps. He hears heels.
But surprise, it's Kiki. Not any of those ghosts of the women he murdered.
Yeah, it's not any ghost. And Kiki, is thanking him for the flowers, and she's mentioning we're probably we're thinking about leaving, but we want to see the procession. And she walks up to the window, and she goes, "I can see the procession moving." And he retorts, he's like, "You can't see anything. There's too much light in here. You can't see nothing." And she goes, "Okay, turn off the lights and come over by the window next to me." And this is where we get some really good tension. Oh yeah. Boy.
So he does. And he does go to the window a bit, and she drops a pair of castanets. which was that was excellent. That sets off him attacking her.
And he lunges for her, and Jerry shows up, and they get into a tussle, and Jerry has gone to Raul during the meantime when Kiki was going to the doctor. He went to Raul to mention, I think I know who killed everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So they all show up, and Dr. G, makes he's able to get them because Jerry's like, yeah, put that, because Raul pulls out a gun. He's about ready to execute him like headshot style.
Yeah.
And then, Jerry's like, put that gun away, and he pushes him, and then Dr. G takes his opportunity, goes and runs out, and there's this gorgeous giant, pan shot of him running to the procession of all these, the town folk, and then all the guys wearing the cloaks and everything. And he goes and hides with them, and they're running after him. And then they confront him, and they grab him. They're kind of walking. It's kind of interesting. Like the procession guys all kind of stop. At first, they grab Dr. G, and the processional people all kind of stop and kind of like surround them. And all of a sudden, they just get back into formation. They just start walking again, and then they drag him off to the side, and they're asking, they're only you. You were, other than Charlie, you were the only one person who knew and who had access to uh, the leopard claws, and this I also mentioned because Charlie forgot to mention before they're about to leave, and this is what kind of the impetus for this is. Charlie shows up at the cemetery, with the leopard. He finds the leopard's been killed.
Yeah, the leopard's been dead for a while.
Yeah, the leopard's been dead, and it's been, he's pretty much just eviscerated. And, Dr. G just he not only did he kill the leopard, but he I guess he cut off the paw as well. It's kind of insinuated that he cut off the paw and he was using. We're never seen any of the actual murders, 1940s, Hays Code. Ain't no gonna show that. No, we're not gonna see that, but it's insinuated he's been using the claws.
Yeah.
Of this thing.
God.
It's does he have a glove? It's like a Freddy Krueger? Is he using it as a glove? We never see anything like that. I was really.
Did this movie influence a whole bunch of horror franchises we didn't even consider?
I know. It's pretty wild, but then he starts basically says he got it. They're like, why did you do it? Why'd you do it? He's like, well, I heard them, when they screamed, I basically I couldn't help myself. So, and then, he was getting off basically, he was getting really excited about making the women, frightened, seeing them in a frightened state. And then Roll's just like, fuck this. And just, he blasts them away.
Yeah.
So
Raul has his glare was just icy. I've never seen a colder stare than that.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! Yeah, I mean, just you watch his eyes, it's like this. I don't know if it could be both 1,000-yard stare and also staring daggers, but there was a lot happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he ends up rightfully shooting Dr. G. I mean, I would do the same probably if I were in his position.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have a little cat paws trying to get in under the door.
Oh shoot! We got the leopard showing up.
No.
Maybe the leopard or Dr. G. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, Chris! I'm not going to cast aspersions on Chris.
So, yep. And then after that, they.
They have to take Raul in, and there's some mention of him standing trial. But look, nobody's going to care. He's not going to get charged. He's not going to.
No. So they take him. He's the police are talking with him. They're kind of like, well, I guess we can move all our lives, and then cut the credits. Nothing else.
In and out, quick and dirty.
That's the end of the film.
Yeah.
And.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I just want to say, it's low budget. It moves pretty briskly. There are some of the Consuela, that's kind of the slowest part of the film for me personally. But like just like the usage of just like the camera angles in this film and the use of shadows is what really sells this film for me.
I honestly didn't feel any slow parts. I feel like it moved at the right speed. I was pretty engrossed with I was pretty engrossed with the movie as a whole though. I forgot to ask you this, but how did you first see this?
I first saw this. I was just interested in older horror films, and I found uh, directors talking about mentioning Cat People because Cat People is a very well known film. It got a remake, and I was just really interested in checking it out. And I found out about Val Luton, and just doing some research. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I bought the DVD because they came out with the DVD set
Oh
years
yeah,
ago, and
that
it came
five
with
disc work.
all. It came with all the movies. Most of the movies are on Blu-ray now. Like Cat People is released by Criterion. Several of the others are by Leopard Man and The Body Snatcher and Curse of Cat People are released by Shout, Screen
Okay.
Factory, and then the other ones, Isle of the Dead, Bedlam, and Ghost Ship are released by Warner Archive. The only really ones we're really missing is we're missing The Seventh Victim, and I Walked with a Zombie
Hmm.
are the last two that have not hit high definition home video. I don't know if there's high definition versions of those two films out there, but they're on DVD.
Yeah, I'm most likely going to be picking up a copy of this because again, like I've missed out on so many different periods of horror and just 30s and 40s and yeah, I mean 30s and 60s. I was just like it's just a void, just a blank
Mm-hmm.
spot. So, but I definitely obviously would recommend this, and it's available to watch for free on the Internet Archive. If you just Google Leopard Man streaming, it's I don't know 4 or 5 results down. Uh, but one of the things that I was thinking about is, I mean, it's kind of difficult to find a lot of interest in these older movies from for current audience. I did see a review earlier that was talking about this movie, and it was they said it was not very engaging, and I understand opinions, it's fine, but I think it's being so like one of the themes that William Friedkin mentioned that I just kind of like latched onto because I think about I think it makes a lot of sense was there's this theme of the absent father in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like Teresa's father hasn't come home from work, Consuela's is dead, and we don't really know about Clo-Clo's father. We don't see him, but we see her having like this interaction with that rich man at the nightclub who is quite a bit older and who is the father of that of the woman that is his daughter and his son-in-law are basically there at the nightclub as well. They're just separate from him and Clo-Clo during this time.
And there's a great moment where he asked his daughter to dance, and she's like, "That sounds like a good idea," and she just turns to
her husband.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, let's go dance, and he's gotten up, and it's just like, oh man.
Yeah,
That's kind of the impetus of him, like, okay, screw it, I'll just go talk to Clo-Clo. Why not?
Yeah, and I mean, we don't see the father of Clo-Clo's daughter around either. We
Nope.
only have some sort of mention of him, if that's him at all, when Clo-Clo's having that conversation with the rich guy. So, I mean, we have that theme all throughout the film, but it's like when we think of that theme of the absent father, you also kind of have to consider the role of authority. That usually is often what it symbolizes: authority, structure, and protection, right? So the police aren't particularly helpful for most of this film. I mean, they don't even really believe Jerry near the end, where he's kind of pointing out Dr. G as a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone in the town is afraid, and emotions are just really ruling over logic. And I didn't, it's like I feel like I feel like people are missing some of these finer details, and it's difficult to get to because I understand sometimes it's hard to relate to older movies, but it's worth making the effort. I wasn't expecting anything that deep from a movie that was only 60 some odd minutes. But I really appreciate you like wanting to do this because it's like always nice to have like new horizons opened up too.
Yeah, just different avenues, and I didn't want to watch this film because like, oh, it's like like for me, I don't care what decade a film comes out, like or a movie or whatever. If it catches my interest and my intrigue, I'll check it out.
Right on. Is there anything extra that you want to say about this movie before we wrap up?
Well, I would just say I would recommend you check this out. If anything, just to see kind of an inspiration piece. But I would also highly recommend to check out Cat People. I was going to originally suggest we do that film, but I feel like that film's gotten it gets a lot of adulation, and there's a lot of talk on it already.
I mean, you might also have to fight Lauren to the death for that.
I'll let Lauren. He'll be able to discuss that film. But I thought this one would be, this one I feel like it's a lot snappier. Like the other Val Lewton films, like Isle of the Dead, The Ghost Ship. Those really, you feel they're slower than this film. I feel like this film is just rat-a-tat. We're constantly moving. A lot of fulcrum. It's constantly on the move. So, and I recommend like if you're a big slasher fan, check it out. It's not going to be, don't be expecting, oh, I'm going to get a Friday the 13th in the 1940s. Not quite. But it did, think of it more like if you like Giallo, the Giallos, I would recommend this for you. But if you're looking for like Swam Bam, Kill a Minute, not going to get that. Like Sam said earlier, 15 minutes before. But the story and the characters are what keep you going. Like you think like the two kind of central characters, kind of the anchors, are kind of like Sam was mentioning, just kind of dull. But towards the end of the film, you're like, oh, these characters do have like there is a conscience. They do care, and I appreciate a film that actually tries to have characters with some sort of depth.
Yeah. Well said. Alrighty. You got any socials that you want to shout out, or you just want people to leave you alone?
Just leave me the hell alone.
All right, guys.
If you want to follow me, I have a Twitter. It is.
You changed it again.
Yes, I did. Yep. Okay. It's Foregone Spirit.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll put that in the bio. In the bio section below this episode, and that's where my social links will be there as well. So, wow, that was super fun. Yeah, until next time, poor don't cheat one another. We're all poor together, guys. Just jam out to this